Very good morning to all the future officers. Welcome to the CT 360 series session in which we cover the most important GNDSA current affairs from the exam point of view. So, my dear friends, I hope that your preparations are going well for your upcoming examinations. And today in this session, we will be covering a very important report from the examination point of view, that is the Annual Status of Education Report 2024. So before directly moving on to the report, I would like to ask you that if I'm audible and visible to all of you, please give me a thumbs up in the chat box so that we can start with the today's session. So guys, if I'm audible and visible, please give me a thumbs up so that we can start with the today's session in which we will be covering a very important report, that is the ASER report. As we all know that 14th edition of this report has been recently released, and this report becomes really very important for all the people who are preparing for RBI, SEBI, NABARD or other important banking examinations. Okay, so if I'm audible and visible, please give me a thumbs up. So thank you guys for giving me the thumbs up in the chat box. Very good morning to you, Guru Raj, and all the people who have joined in the today's session, right? So एक काफी इंपॉर्टेंट रिपोर्ट है और एक काफी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव सेशन रहेगा, ठीक है? और काफी सारा डेटा रहेगा, तो हमें यहाँ पर बिल्कुल भी we should not be getting afraid of this data because बहुत ही सिंप्लीफाई करके and I have highlighted all the important data that you are required to cover from this report from the exam point of view. Okay, so let's start. So guys, this report is the annual status of education report, which basically provides us the evaluation of the children who are in the rural areas, right? So here we are not dividing the students among the in terms of the standard, like in which standard they are in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. But instead of that, we are basically grouping them in terms of ages. And I will be telling you more details about this part in the upcoming slides. Okay. So you can see here that ASER is basically a nationwide citizen-led household survey. It is one of the largest surveys which is being taken place in terms of education. And this survey provides us a snapshot of the children's schooling and learning in the rural India. तो रूरल इंडिया के अंदर चिल्ड्रंस की स्कूलिंग कैसी है और लर्निंग कैसी है, तो ये बात हमें इस रिपोर्ट से पता चलती है। इस रिपोर्ट का सबसे पहला एडिशन लॉन्च हुआ था 2005 के अंदर, ठीक है? और ये जो एडिशन है, दिस इज द 14th एडिशन ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर रिपोर्ट विच इज बीन रिलीज्ड बाय एनजीओ प्रथम। तो प्रथम एक एनजीओ है जो कि इसको रिलीज करता है, एंड it is the name of organization. Whenever we are covering any report, we always tell you that we need to cover the releasing body of the report, right? So Pratham is that releasing body which releases this report. और ये जो एडिशन है, this is the 14th edition of this annual status of education report, जो basically which is dedicated to the rural areas, right? So it is very important from the exam point of view, okay? Because we all know that education is one of the very important topic when it comes to the topics of examinations, right? So now when we talk about the ASER report, guys, so you can see here that this report provides us the data about the children who are living in the rural areas across the different levels, that is at the national level, state level, as well as the district level. And it tells us about the enrollment status of the children, कि कितने बच्चे enrolled हैं, उनका basic reading और arithmetic level क्या है, ठीक है? अगर हम बात करें रीडिंग की, तो रीडिंग पे आपका वर्ड लेवल आता है, सेंटेंसेस आते हैं, पैराग्राफ लेवल आता है। अगर आप बात करते हैं बेसिक अरिथमेटिक स्किल्स पर, तो अरिथमेटिक स्किल्स में आपका सब्ट्रैक्शन, डिविजन, सो ये सभी चीजें आती हैं। So as a part of this report, it evaluates the schooling status of the children. सबसे पहले स्कूलिंग स्टेटस क्या है, कितने स्टूडेंट्स एनरोल्ड हैं इन द एज ग्रुप ऑफ 3 to 16 ईयर्स, ठीक है? तो यहाँ पर फर्दर हम इनको डिवाइड करेंगे इन द 3 डिफरेंट ग्रुप्स। वो क्या ग्रुप्स हैं, वी विल बी डिस्कसिंग दैट इन द डिटेल मैनर। Now, apart from the schooling status, see, अब बच्चों ने स्कूल में एडमिशन ले लिया है, they have taken the admission to the school, but what exactly, whether they are able to read the important things, whether they are able to get that education, that skill, which is going to help them in order to read the things or to do basic arithmetic problems. Okay, so that's why we are going to evaluate ability to read simple text and do basic arithmetic in the age group of 5 to 16 years. Let me tell you that the survey framework is basically based on the 2011 census, और 11 census के अकॉर्डिंग 30 विलेजेस को रेंडमली सेलेक्ट किया जाता है एक स्टेट से, ठीक है? सॉरी, फ्रॉम ईच डिस्ट्रिक्ट, हमारे हर स्टेट के हर एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट के 30 विलेजेस को यहाँ चूज किया जाता है, एंड 20 हाउस होल्ड फ्रॉम द ईच विलेजेस। एंड लेट मी टेल यू गाइस दैट दिस इज द वेरी फर्स्ट टाइम कि किसी भी इस तरीके के एजुकेशनल सर्वे के अंदर डिजिटल लिटरेसी को भी इसका पार्ट बनाया गया है, बिकॉज वी ऑल नो दैट डिजिटल इंडिया का जमाना है। वी गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया इज बेसिकली टारगेटिंग टू क्रिएट मेक इंडिया डिजिटल इंडिया, and everything is basically revolving around the same. That is why it is very important that we should also evaluate whether our children are able to do the basic things in the digitally or not. Okay, for example, we can say that as you guys are watching this session on the YouTube, so whether you are able to locate that a particular specific information on the YouTube or not. For example, what is a cap? Who is the Prime Minister of India? Right? So whether that student, the child will be able to identify that particular specific information or YouTube or not. And when he is able to identify it, then whether he is able to share that information, share that link of the YouTube to other people or not. So across these dimensions, we will be evaluating these children in the rural areas. Okay. So I hope this point is clear to all of you. Now, coming to the most important point, that is the key findings of this report. So overall, when we talk about the key findings of this report, it states that the learning losses which we have seen after the COVID-19 pandemic. So COVID-19 pandemic at time, but there was a lot of learning losses because schools were shut due to the lockdowns, right? But we have seen that whatever the performance of India was there in the pre-pandemic level, now we have recovered from that particular level, right, in comparison to the pre-कोविड 2018 levels. तो अगर हम बात करते हैं फाउंडेशनल लिटरेसी न्यूमरेसी की, तो वहां पर रिकवरी देखने को मिली है अमंग द स्कूल स्टूडेंट्स. और जब हम बात करेंगे अपने एसर 2024 सर्वे की, तो लेट मी टेल यू दैट हियर वी आर डिवाइडिंग द चिल्ड्रन अमंग द थ्री डिफरेंट ग्रुप्स. दैट इज प्री प्राइमरी, दीज आर दो स्टूडेंट्स हु आर बिटवीन द एज ग्रुप ऑफ 3 to 5 years. Then elementary within the age group of 6 to 14. Then older children are there among the age group of 15 to 16 years. तो ये सबसे पहला important part है जो आपको पता होना चाहिए. As these are the three groups, and across these three groups only we are going to cover the key findings, major key findings of this particular report. Okay, so I hope that till now you are very much clear with this particular report, that what exactly this report is, what this report tells us, and how it is going to evaluate the children among the rural areas. Okay, so now let's move on to the very first part, that is the pre-primary age group of 3 to 5 years. Okay, the first thing that we are required to cover is that what is the enrollment. See, we will be moving ahead, right? Ki whether they are able to study and to solve the arithmetic skills or not. But before that, it is very important that whether they are going to school or not, whether they are enrolled into the school or not. So that is why it is the very first parameter. It is enrollment in pre-primary institutions. So among children aged 3 to 5 years, when we talk about the enrollment, so you can see that enrollment has improved steadily between 2018 and 2024. Let me tell you that pandemic से पहले 2018 में इस रिपोर्ट को रिलीज किया गया था, बट पैंडेमिक की वजह से 2022 वाला एडिशन नहीं आया, एंड 2024 वाला एडिशन आज अभी 2 days बैक लॉन्च हुआ. ठीक है, सो इसलिए हमारा जो कंपेरेटिव लेवल है दैट इज ऑफ 2018. I hope this is clear. So now guys, when we talk about the 3-year-old, among the 3-year-old people, we can see that the enrollment percentage of the children between the at the age of 3 year, it has increased from 68.1% to 77.4%. Similarly, 4-year-olds के लिए भी 76% से increase होके 83.3% पर गया है, and 5-year-olds के लिए 58.5% to 71.4%. So from this particular ratio and this particular table, we can definitely identify that yes, the enrollment among the age group of 3 to 5 years has increased from 2018 to 2024. Okay? So there is an increase from 2018 to 2024 in the enrollment of people in the age group of 3 to 5 years. So one thing is very clear. Second thing, so when the students are enrolling, these age group students of 3 to 5 years are enrolling. So where they are enrolling? They are enrolling to pre-primary institutions. And what exactly these pre-primary institutions are? So the biggest provider of services in terms of pre-primary, it is the Anganwadi centers. So Anganwadi centers आप सभी ने सुना है, right? So Anganwadi centers are the biggest provider of services in terms of pre-primary age group. As you can see here, that more than half of the children aged 3 and 4 years are enrolled in the आंगनवाड़ी centers. आंगनवाड़ी centers के अंदर आप देख सकते हैं more than half of the children, मतलब 50% से ज्यादा बच्चे जो 3 से 4 साल के हैं, they are enrolled in आंगनवाड़ी centers. Similarly, when we talk about the 5-year-old people, so around 33% of the people, they are attending the private school or the preschool in 2024. So 2024 की अगर हम बात करें, 5 साल के बच्चे, सो क्या हो रहा है कि 3 to 4 years तक दे आर इन द आंगनवाड़ी सेंटर्स एंड देन दे आर टेकिंग एडमिशन इन द प्राइवेट स्कूल और द प्री स्कूल इन 2024, right? So this figure was 37.3% in 2018, and this is in again reached to 37.5% in 2024. See, during the pandemic and after the pandemic, the percentage got decreased to 30.8%, but then it further increased to 37.5%. Now you must be thinking कि sir काफी ज़्यादा data है, how we will be able to retain it? Let me tell you that यहाँ पर that only thing that I have highlighted in the yellow, that I have marked in the yellow part, this is something you need to remember. Okay, so over 5 year olds की हम बात करें तो 37.5% is their enrollment in the 2024. But यहाँ पर there are two states which have basically seen a opposite trend. As you can see that Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir were the states in UT जहाँ पर enrollment government institutions में increase हुई है 2018 से. But हमने कहा 5 year olds की तो major of the people are in the private school or the preschool in 2024. But Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir में they are enrolling in the government institutions. Okay, so this is something we need to see and understand. Now we are done. From here, the most important thing is which kind of body is the biggest provider of services in pre-primary age group. If the question will be asked to you this, can you tell me the right answer? What is that institution? It is the Anganwadi centers, which are the biggest provider of services. Okay. Now moving to the next part. So now when they are taking into the pre-primary, then the first stage is their entry into the standard one. अब वो first class में admission लेंगे students, right? So the proportion of children who are underage or age 5 or below is decreasing over time. See, guys, in the earlier part we used to see that the people who are even underage, they are sitting in the higher classes. For example, in the standard one they were having, but their age was below 5 years, right? So basically they were called underage, right? Even in our schools as well, when we were in the schools, we have seen a lot of students that who were younger than us, but they were studying with us, right? In the when the student is 3 years younger to you, but he is still in the eighth standard with you, right? So this is something called which is called underage. So when we talk about this kind of trend that underage students are there in the school, so it has also decreased. Okay, and it was lowest at 16.7% in 2024. Okay, so in 2018, the figure was 25.6%, and now it is reduced to 16.7% in 2024. A very important point. Apart from that, when we talk about the Gujarat, so in Gujarat, this percentage has further decreased to a very low levels at 4% in 2024. Okay, so Gujarat was having an exception, which is having the lowest such percentage of underage students in the standard one. So now, after pre-primary, the student has entered to the standard one. Now, next part is their enrollment. Now we are done with the 3 to 5 years age group, right? Standard वन में आ गए हैं. अब अगला जो हमारा age group है, that is of the 6 to 14 years. तो 6 to 14 years में भी we will be first covering their enrollment. ठीक है? अब उनका enrollment होगा in the further higher standards, right? Standard 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So अगर हम बात करते हैं among the age group of 6 to 14 years, overall school enrollment rates have exceeded 95%. ठीक है, अगर हम लास्ट 20 years की बात करें, if we will be discussing the case of last 20 years, then overall school enrollment rate where these age group of 6 to 14 years of the people are basically 95% plus, right? And when we talk about in the 2024, this percentage was 98.1%. Okay, so you can see here that in 2022 it was 98.4, in 2024 it is 98.1. So there was a slight decrease in the in this age group of students who are enrolling into the schools. And when we talk across all the states, it has improved, and age group is above 95% in 2024. Okay, so major thing that we have to remember here is that the enrollment rate of the people among 6 to 14 age group is more than 95% in the last 20 years, and this year it is 98.1%. Now, when we talk about, there are two types of enrollments, right? There are private schools also in you can see in our country, and there are some government schools also. So now when we talk about the government school enrollment, you can see that 65.5% of the children in 6 to 14 age group in India were enrolled in government schools. So 2018 में this number was 65.5%. But pandemic के बाद क्या हुआ? जो enrollment था government schools के अंदर, it has further increased to 72.9%. But after the pandemic, the number has again come down to 66.8%. So one thing we have to remember is that गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स के अंदर एनरोलमेंट की बात करें तो पहले ये इंक्रीज हुआ था फ्रॉम प्री पैंडेमिक टू पैंडेमिक लेवल, देन आफ्टर पैंडेमिक इट हैज डिक्रीज्ड अगेन। तो वापस से अपने पुराने लेवल पे वो आने लगा है, दैट इज द एनरोलमेंट ऑफ पीपल इन द गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स। बट यहाँ पर एक्सेप्शन था उत्तराखंड और जम्मू एंड कश्मीर के अंदर, राइट। सो आई होप दिस पॉइंट इज ऑल्सो क्लियर कि चिल्ड्रंस, अभी हम 3 6 टू 14 ईयर्स की बात कर रहे हैं, राइट। ओवरऑल 95% से ज्यादा इंक्रीज था एनरोलमेंट रेट्स के अंदर, और गवर्नमेंट स्कूल एनरोलमेंट की बात करें तो वो पहले इंक्रीज हुआ एंड नाउ इट हैज डिक्रीज। सी द ट्रेंड्स आर रियली वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड दिस ट्रेंड्स when you will be noting down them, then it is really going to be very helpful for a descriptive answer. जब आप descriptive question का आंसर करेंगे in the exam, तो वहां पर definitely you can mention such kind of trend that as per the ASER report, when we talk about the enrollment of students in the government school, so during the pandemic it increased, but now it is again decreasing and coming to the pre-pandemic levels. So this kind of information you can always mention in your descriptive writing as well. Now, moving ahead. So, we always tell you that yes, this report is going to evaluate their reading skills, arithmetic skills. So, now it's the time to cover the reading skills. Okay. So, when we talk about the reading skills, so what exactly is the task that was there with the students who are in this age group of 6 to 14 years? So you can see here that the reading task assesses whether a child can read letter, words, a simple paragraph at the standard 1 level of difficulty. See, अभी वो एक हायर स्टैंडर्ड्स में है, स्टैंडर्ड 3 5 और 8 में है, बट हम यहाँ पे इनसे क्या करवा रहे हैं, एक बेसिक चीज, whether that particular child is able to read a letter, क्या वो लेटर्स को आइडेंटिफाई कर पा रहा है, वर्ड्स पढ़ पा रहा है, एक सिंपल पैराग्राफ उनको अगर दिया जाए स्टैंडर्ड 1 डिफिकल्टी लेवल का, जो वो स्टैंडर्ड 1 में पढ़ते थे, क्या वो उसको प्रॉपरली पढ़ पा रहा है, नहीं पढ़ पा रहा है। नाउ whether that particular child is able to read a story at the standard 2 level of difficulty or not. So इससे हम identify करते हैं that what exactly is their learning levels, right? They are already in the standard 3, but whether they are able to do the things that they should have been doing in the standard 1 or not. Okay, so you can see here that when we compare all India levels, so the reading level have basically improved in the government schools in all the elementary grades, that is standard 1 to 8 में अगर हम देखें तो reading levels improve हुए हैं, and specifically in the government schools. Okay, and when we talk about standard 3, now we will be discussing this particular part across the three different standards, that is standard 3, स्टैंडर्ड 5 एंड स्टैंडर्ड 8। ओके, तो थर्ड क्लास, फिफ्थ क्लास और एट्थ क्लास को हम यहाँ डिस्कस करेंगे। जब हम बात करते हैं थर्ड क्लास की, तो जो बेसिक रीडिंग लेवल्स हैं वो हमने देखा कि गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स में ये हाईएस्ट थे। द बेसिक रीडिंग लेवल्स ऑफ द स्टैंडर्ड 3 चिल्ड्रन वाज हाईएस्ट इन द गवर्नमेंट स्कूल, राइट। और ओवरऑल भी जब हम बात करें तो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स के अंदर जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं, दे परफॉर्म बेटर एज कम्पेयर टू द प्राइवेट स्कूल्स। ओके, तो यहाँ पर एक आप चार्ट देख सकते हैं दैट आई हैव टेकन फ्रॉम वन ऑफ द न्यूज़पेपर्स, राइट। So I will be discussing that in a very detailed manner in the next slide. So from here you can see that in the standard 3, when we talk about the government schools, you can see here that the people who can read the standard level 1 part, right, or standard 2 text or the story, it is 20.9%, and now it has increased to 23.4% in 2024. So there is an increase. But when we talk about the government private schools, it has decreased from 40.6% to 35.5%. Now, when we talk about the standard 5, you can see here that it is again slight increase from 44.2% to 44.8%. But in the private schools, it is decreased. So as already told you that among the government schools, when we talk about the performance of the government schools, it was higher because you can see that there are more people, and in the government schools, the numbers are continuously increasing, right, from the previous years. Similarly, for the standard 8 as well, you can see that 69% was there, right? In the government school, it reduced to 67.5% in the standard 8. And अगर हम स्टैंडर्ड 8 की बात करते हैं तो गवर्नमेंट और प्राइवेट्स दोनों ही स्कूल्स में यहाँ पे डिक्रीज हुआ है। And when we talk about in 2024, guys, Mizoram and Himachal Pradesh had the highest proportion of standard 5 children in the government schools. जो हमारे standard 5 children है government schools में, यहाँ पर सबसे ज्यादा मिजोरम और हिमाचल प्रदेश में थे, ठीक, जो रीड कर सकते हैं स्टैंडर्ड 2 लेवल टेक्स्ट को काफी इजीली। तो स्टैंडर्ड 2 लेवल एक स्टोरी हमने उनको टास्क दिया कि स्टोरी को आप पढ़ के दिखाइए। स्टूडेंट ने उसको अगर अच्छे से पढ़ा है तो डेफिनेटली उनको एक अच्छा स्कोर वहां पर देखने को मिला। एंड लेट मी टेल यू दैट ये जो पूरा सर्वे है यहाँ पर 1-on-1 किया गया, दैट इज हर एक स्टूडेंट को, स्कूल के हर एक स्टूडेंट को पिक किया गया, ठीक है, वहां पर उनको ये टास्क दिए गए और यहाँ पर देखा गया कि डिफरेंट डिफिकल्टी लेवल्स, कि वो कंफर्टेबली पढ़ पाए हैं उसको या फिर उन्होंने कितनी मिस्टेक्स उसमें की हैं, तो उसके बेसिस पर वी आर एबल टू कम टू दिस पर्टिकुलर कंक्लूजन। ओके, तो यहाँ पर सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट क्या है, यहाँ पर सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट ये है दैट ऑल इंडिया फिगर्स की अगर हम बात करें तो रीडिंग लेवल इंप्रूव हुए हैं गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स के अंदर इन ऑल द एलिमेंट्री ग्रेड्स, राइट। सो आई होप दिस इज क्लियर टू ऑल ऑफ यू। ओके, अगर अभी तक की स्टोरी आपको क्लियर है तो प्लीज गिव मी थम्स अप इन द चैट बॉक्स so that I can really ensure that yes you are able to understand all these important things. Okay, एक काफी important report है, इसलिए वी आर कवरिंग इट इन अ वेरी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव मैनर, जिससे कि आप इस पर्टिकुलर सर्वे के थ्रू समझ पाए कि एक्चुअली क्या स्टेटस है एजुकेशन का इन द रूरल एरियाज, वेदर पीपल आर रियली एबल टू do the things that they should have been doing in their earlier standards or not. Okay, so अभी हमने बात की एलिमेंट्री एज ग्रुप की, दैट इज 6 to 14 ईयर्स, हमने यहाँ स्टैंडर्ड 3, 5 और 8 को कवर किया। अब हम बात करते हैं अरिथमेटिक स्किल्स की, राइट। सो यहाँ पर हमने ऑलरेडी देखा रीडिंग के बारे में, अब हम बात करेंगे अरिथमेटिक स्किल्स के बारे में। दैट मीन्स यहाँ पर सबसे पहली चीज क्या आएगी, जैसे रीडिंग में वी वर आइडेंटिफाइंग दैट वेदर दे आर एबल टू रिकॉग्नाइज द लेटर्स और नॉट, वेदर दे आर एबल टू रीड द वर्ड्स और नॉट। Similarly, in the arithmetic skills, they are required to recognize numbers from 1 to 9, right? Then they are required to recognize numbers from 11 to 99. The third thing is that a two-digit numerical subtraction problem will be given to them to solve it. And then there is a numerical division problem, that is a three-digit number will be divided by one-digit number. So whether they are able to execute these operations or not, these are very basic arithmetic skills that one must have while they are studying in standard 3, 5, and 8, right? So this is something which has been given to them, and on the basis of that we have identified दैट जो चिल्ड्रंस का बेसिक अरिथमेटिक लेवल है वहां पर काफी इंप्रूवमेंट देखने को मिली है, एंड दिस इज ऑल्सो एविडेंट फ्रॉम दिस ग्राफ एज वेल, राइट। यू कैन सी हियर दैट everything is basically increasing only from 2018 levels, be it the government school or be it the private school, right? Reading mein government school was doing well, but here in terms of arithmetic both the schools are doing well, right? So children's basic arithmetic levels, they have seen substantial improvement in both government and private schools, and it has reached the highest level over a decade. Okay, now we will be discussing this chart too in the next slide. So we will be discussing it across the three standards, that is standard 3, 5 and 8. When we talk about the standard 3, तो जो all India figure है आपका ये increase हुआ है 28.2% से 33.7%. ठीक है, let me tell you my dear friends that here basically we are giving you the all India figure, and here it has been given for government and the private schools across all the three standards. यहाँ पर it is being given to show you, to showcase you that what exactly is a comparison from the previous years. But what we have to remember, we have to remember only this part, that is जब हम बात करें स्टैंडर्ड 3 में तो 33.7% was basically 33.7% children were able to do this numerical subtractions, right, in 2024. Now, when we talk about the standard 5, at the all India level, we have seen that the standard 5 children who can do at least a numerical division has also seen an improvement. As in 2018, it was 27.9% and it has increased to 30.7%. अब देख सकते हो कि standard 3 में 33.7% था, standard 5 में it was 30.7%. Once again, I would like to clarify here, guys, one more important thing, that whatever I am covering in the English language, I am also trying to cover that in the Hindi language so that we can cater both kind of students. Okay, so the people who are well versed with the English language, guys, do not worry, nothing will be left for you, right? Everything, every point will be covered in both the languages. Okay, so यहाँ पर standard 5 में you can see 30.7% in 2024. Again, there is a slight improvement from the previous years. Now, when we talk about the standard 8, the performance has also again increased. It was a very slight increase from 44.1% to 45.8% in 2024. So you can see here that it was in the range of 30% in standard 3 and 5, and it was in the range of 45% in the standard 8. तो इस तरीके से हम याद रख सकते हैं चीजों को. In this manner, we will be able to retain the important things, right? It is the 30% range in the standard 3 and 5, and standard 8 it is 45.8% in 2024. And you can see in the both private and government schools we have seen improvements, right? Every part we can see that there is an improvement. So I think this is very much important part, and we are done with this, right? We have covered in the age group of 6 to 14 years that what exactly, whether they are able to do the reading part and whether they are having the proper skills to solve the arithmetic problems, right? Now let's move on to the older children, guys. Now we will be moving on to ahead to the older children that are aged group 15 to 16 years. Okay? So सबसे पहली चीज in all the age groups we have covered the very important thing. What was that? That is their enrollment, right? So when we talk about the proportion of 15 to 16 years old children who are not enrolled in the school, see, the people who are not enrolled in the school, it has decreased. Basically, is this also shows that the people who are enrolled, it has increased, right? So who are not enrolled in the school, it has dropped sharply. And what was the number in 2024? It was 7.9% in 2024. See, it was 13.1% in 2018, but now it has decreased. It has decreased to 7.9% in 2024. Now, when we talk about the proportion of girls who are not enrolled, it has increased to 8.1%. See, overall, it has decreased from the 2018 levels. But when we talk about the girls who are not enrolled, this number has increased. Although it is a slight increase, but yes, it is increased to 8.1% in 2024, right? And we have seen that there are so many states who have seen a decline, जहां पर एक declination, reduction देखने को मिला है in the proportion of girls who are not enrolled, but this proportion remains higher than 10% in the few states. So again, this particular finding is very important because we talk about the women empowerment, right? We talk about the gender issues. So there we have to basically see that the states which are having a decline in the proportion of girls who are not enrolled, majorly it has been shown decline, but there are few states जहां पर performance काफी खराब थी, where the performance was really very low as there was a 10% higher in a few states, and that is why overall average हमारा increase was 7.9% से 8.1%. Okay, so we are done with the enrollment part. Now let's move on to the digital literacy. And I already told you that it is the very first time that in any kind of survey, this digital literacy component has been added. Because we are moving towards a digital India, so it is very important for us that whether our children are able to operate the digital equipments or not, whether they are able to access the digital information or whether they're able to understand it, right? So when we talk about the digital literacy, guys, the very first thing is that you and me are basically involved in this kind of YouTube session. How? Because we are having the proper equipments, right? You are having your phones, I'm having my laptop here right now with me, with the help of which I'm able to access all this content, and I'm also able to provide to you. Similarly, for the children's, accessibility is a very first component. In order to attain that information, in order to gain that information from the digital equipments, they must have the digital equipment. So the first thing is access to the smartphones, and that was basically you can see that across the age group of 15 to 16 years age group, you can see that 90% of both girls and boys are having the smartphone at home. ठीक है, 90% से ज़्यादा girls and boys, they are having smartphones at home, and more than 80% report knowing how to use a smartphone. See, among these 90% of both girls and boys who are having smartphones at home, among these people, only 80% they know that how they are required to use a smartphone. And again, the awareness in the boys is more as compared to the girls. So there is a gender gap, you can see. ठीक है, 85.5% of boys as compared to 79.4% of the girls, they know how to use a smartphone. Okay, I hope this is clear to all of you. And there are three states, that is Bihar, Jharkhand, and Madhya Pradesh, where we have seen that the proportion of those who are having a smartphone at home and those who can use a smartphone are lower as compared to the other states. ठीक है? So basically इनकी जो performance है काफी कम रही है, but apart from that, from here, the very important part is that majority of the students are having the accessibility of the smartphone, right? Now the next thing will be that how they are using the smartphones. When they are using the smartphones, be it for the educational purposes or for the social media purposes, then whether they are digitally literate or not. So everything we will be covering here in this particular session. Do not worry, all the aspects of this report we will be covering in the today's session. So we are done with the accessibility of smartphones. Now let's move on to the ownership of the smartphones. So when we talk about the 14 to 16-year-old people who own smartphones is basically low. But it is increasing with the age. That is, when we talk about the age group of 14 years, the number of people who are having the ownership of smartphone is less. But when it increases to 15 years, the ownership level is also increasing. When it increases to 16 years, again it is increasing with the age. Okay. So when we talk about the children who are using a smartphone, only 27% of the 14-year-olds are having their own smartphone, right? But when we talk about the 16-year-olds, 37.8% of the children are having their own smartphone. Okay. So in the 14-year-old, it was 27%, and you can see that the percentage has increased to 37.8% for the 16-year-olds. Now we have seen a very important point, that is the gender gap in the smartphone ownership. As you can see here, that 36.2% of the boys are having the smartphone, but only as compared to 26.9% of the girls. So you can see here that there is a difference of almost 6.5% in this ownership pattern between the boys and the girls, as boys are having accessibility and the ownership of the smartphones as compared to the girls. And this gender gap was seen across all the states in our country, right? So now we are done with the accessibility and the ownership, right? Now the next part is their usage, how they are using it. So 82.2% of all the children, they reported how they are going to use the smartphone. Out of these people, 57% have reported that they use it for the educational activity. Now guys, it is also coming to you. When you are having all these digital equipments, your mobile phones, laptops, iPads, right? So for what purposes you are using them? You are using them for the social media purposes, you are using them for the entertainment purposes, you're using them for the educational purposes. So it is always required that we have to manage our resources very properly, right? And we are required to efficiently use them. Now when we talk about these children, they are using it for the two kind of purposes. One is educational activity, and the second one is the social media. And you can see here that the people who are using phone for the social media is higher as compared to the people you are using there that for the educational activities. Okay. And but here Kerala stands out in this particular whole part because 80% children, they reported that they use a smartphone for educational activity, and 90% से ज़्यादा they are using for the social media. You can see that there are such a kind of high level percentages, right? So digital literacy के अंदर, this is the third parameter we are covering after accessibility, ownership. This is the usage, how they are using it, right? Now comes to the fourth part. See, now they are able to bring out the phone during the survey. Now there will be some tasks that will be given to them, similarly that we have done for the previous age groups, that for assessing their reading and arithmetic skills capability. Now we will be seeing that whether they are able to use it or not. The smartphones. So now guys, the first important part is the digital safety. Okay, we will be covering that part now, but before that we will be covering the digital safety. See, whenever you are using the smartphone, it is very important that we are digitally safe as well, right? So among the children, they are basically well aware of using the social media. The people who are using the smartphone for the social media, they were more aware about protecting themselves online, right? So you can see that 62% of the students know how to block or report a profile, right? 55.2% know how to make a profile private, and 57.7% know how to change a password. So all these things, you can see that it is very important. If there is some profile which is basically irritating you with some kind of illegal things, so you know that how you can block that profile and how you can report that profile. Okay. Similarly, you can make your profile private as well as public, and this is also a kind of information that these students are having. Then how they can change their passwords, it is also known among the people who are using this smartphone. So 57.7% are there. Again, when we talk about this kind of awareness, boys are more aware as compared to the girls across the majority of the states. Again, which states that there is a gender gap here. Take in the safety measures as well, boys' awareness is higher as compared to the girls, right? Now, moving on to the digital literacy, guys. The very important point, that is the digital literacy. So when we talk about the digital literacy, there were some different tasks which were being given to these people who were able to bring their own smartphones during this particular survey, right? And the first task was that they were required to set an alarm, right? When they have set an alarm, right? So the next thing is, when they will be waking up, what they are required to do? They are required to browse a specific piece of information. For example, who is the Prime Minister of India, right? Which country won the T20 World Cup in 2024? So basically, such kind of questions are were being given to them, right? Some basic information which were relevant to them. Then the third part is locating a YouTube video, whether they are able to locate a YouTube video or not. And if they are able to locate it, then whether they are able to share it with someone else via messaging platform. For example, they can share it via text, they can share it via WhatsApp, they can share it via Telegram, they can share it via Facebook. So using any kind of messaging platform, they can share it. So across these dimensions, we are assessing these children. So now here guys, on the day of the survey, when we talk about the people who were bringing their smartphones, 70.2% boys bring their smartphone, while 62.2% girls bring a smartphone. Okay, this smartphone can be their own, their family member, or of their neighbors to do this digital task to basically showcase their capability of using these smartphones. Now we have seen that around more than 75% of the children were able to perform these tasks सक्सेसफुली। तो ये जो तीन टास्क हमने इनके लिए रखे थे तो 75% से ज्यादा लोगों ने इसको कंप्लीट किया। ठीक है, among these 75 people who could locate the video on YouTube, उसमें से 90% से ज्यादा ऐसे लोग थे जिनको उसे शेयर करना भी आता था। सो मोर देन 90% were able to share that particular YouTube video by the messaging platform. But again, let me tell you here that across all these tasks, again, we have seen the gender gap. As you can see that the gender gap also exists in bringing a smartphone as well. And now in the task as well, the gender gap is really existing. And this is something that we need to really cater and we can definitely focus upon, right? So this is also kind of important detail that can be worked upon by the policymakers in order to reduce this kind of gender gap. So these gender gaps were observed in performance in every task, and this particular gender gap was the highest in the first task, that is the setting an alarm. So this is something that we should cover from here, right? Now the next part is foundational literacy and numeracy activities. Okay, so when we talk about, see, from here till now, it is done for the students part, right? Across all the three groups we have covered, right? Bait, we have already seen elementary group, we have seen primary group, and now we have seen older children, that is age group of 15 to 16 years. Now there are some school observations that we are required to make, and now we will be covering about the school observations. And the first task here is the foundational literacy and numeracy activities. So we have seen that over 80% of the schools have received directives from the government that they are required to include foundational literacy and numeracy activities in the standard 1, 2, or the 3, right? And among these 80% of the schools, we have seen that at least one teacher had received in-person training on the foundational literacy and numeracy. Similar proportion हमने देखा है where at least one person is getting trained on the foundational literacy and numeracy activities. Okay. Apart from that, we have seen that 75% of the schools have received teaching or learning material or the funds. See, guys, a very important point. In order to attain the education, there should be a proper and appropriate amount of teaching and learning materials from which the students can learn, right? And from which the teachers can teach. So basically, 75% से ज़्यादा schools ऐसे हैं जिनको provide किया है teaching learning material, right? TLM stands for teaching learning materials. Okay. Now apart from that, 75% schools reported implementing a school readiness program. तो जितने भी हमारे स्टूडेंट्स स्टैंडर्ड 1 के लिए आते हैं तो उनके लिए एक स्कूल रेडीनेस प्रोग्राम को भी इम्प्लीमेंट करने को बोला है गवर्नमेंट ने टू मोर देन 75% schools. And more than 95% schools reported having distributed textbooks. तो टेक्स्ट बुक्स डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन काफी इंपॉर्टेंट है क्योंकि स्कूल में तो टीचर्स पढ़ा रहे हैं बट घर जाकर भी बच्चों को उन टेक्स्ट बुक से पढ़ना आना चाहिए, राइट? सो दैट दे कैन डू देयर परफॉर्म देयर होमवर्क्स. सो 95% से ज्यादा स्कूल्स हैं जिन्होंने डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किया टेक्स्ट बुक्स को, and this is really a substantial increase over the 2022 levels. So this was the very first criteria for the school observation. Now apart from that, the next part is the student and teachers attendance. See, students have got enrolled in the schools, right? Teachers are also there, but whether both of them are going to the school or not, whether teachers are going to school to teach students, whether students are going to the school to attain the education. So this is very important. And we have seen that basically we have seen consistent improvement since 2018 in terms of both student and the teacher attendance. अगर हम बात करें overall level पे, जो average student attendance थी, it was 75.9% in 2024 and teacher attendance is 87.5% in 2024. And let me tell you guys that we have seen that both the student and the teacher attendance has improved. And which state was behind this particular trend? the performance of which has led to overall increase in the attendance, in the average student attendance and the average teacher attendance, it was the उत्तर प्रदेश. So उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर जो टीचर स्टूडेंट अटेंडेंस इंप्रूव हुई है, एंड दैट इज वाई ओवरऑल एवरेज स्टूडेंट अटेंडेंस एंड द टीचर अटेंडेंस हैज आल्सो इंक्रीज्ड फ्रॉम 2018 टू 2024. ठीक है, सो ये सिर्फ येलो वाला पार्ट यू हैव टू रिमेंबर फ्रॉम द एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. ओके, एंड ट्रेंड्स आर रियली वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सो ये ट्रेंड भी आपको याद रहेगा, और ये येलो वाले पार्ट से आप इसके परसेंटेजेस को भी याद कर सकते हैं. So this is something, and that is how we are required to cover such kind of reports. When we are just understanding it with more understanding, it is very easy for us to retain the facts and figures from the report, and that is why we are covering this report in such a comprehensive manner. Now let's move on to the next part, that is the small schools and the multi-grade classrooms, right? So basically, you must have seen that there are some schools where the children of different grades are sitting together. Like हमने काफी schools में देखा है, right? अगर हम village areas में जाते हैं तो they are not having that kind of much of the infrastructure. So क्या होता है कि दो different standards जो स्टूडेंट्स है, फॉर एग्जांपल स्टैंडर्ड 3, स्टैंडर्ड एंड 5, सो दोनों ही स्टैंडर्ड्स के जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं दे आर सिटिंग टुगेदर इन दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया. सो दिस इज समथिंग मल्टी ग्रेड स्कूल्स, राइट? सो यहाँ पर हम सबसे पहले बात करेंगे स्मॉल स्कूल्स की. स्मॉल स्कूल्स कौन से हैं? स्मॉल स्कूल्स आर दो स्कूल्स वेयर less than 60 students are enrolled, right? And such kind of the proportion of such kind of government primary schools which are small schools, it has increased from 44% to 52.1% in 2024. And more than 80% primary schools in these states are the small schools. Which states? Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Nagaland. So here you can see that basically more than 80% primary schools are small schools only. And around 66% of the standard 1 and 2 classrooms in primary schools are multi-grade. That means students from more than one grade are sitting together. That means standard 1 and standard 2 students are sitting together in 66% of the primary schools in our country. So this is a very, very important finding from this particular report. So we are done with the small school and multi-grade classroom. I hope this is also very much clear to all the people. Now let's move on to the facilities. See, it's not just that you are distributing the textbooks, you are having such kind of different numbers, but it is also very important that as per the right to education, some apart from that, school facilities should also be there. For example, sports grounds are there or not, toilets are there or not. So this is something that we will be covering under the school observation. Next point, that is the school facilities. So nationally, when we talk about all the right to education related indicators, we have seen small improvements in the past 6 years. That is from 2018 to 2024, we have seen जो भी रिलेटेड इंडिकेटर्स हैं राइट टू एजुकेशन के, उसमें इंप्रूवमेंट देखने को मिली है. फॉर एग्जांपल, द फर्स्ट वन इज द यूजेबल गर्ल्स टॉयलेट. इट हैज आल्सो इंप्रूव्ड फ्रॉम 66% टू 72% इन 2024, राइट? सी, लेट मी टेल यू दैट यहाँ पर हमें जरूरी नहीं है कि हम एक एग्जैक्ट परसेंटेज को याद करें. इवन अगर हम एक रेंज को याद रख सकते हैं अपने माइंड में, इट विल बी इंपॉर्टेंट. ठीक है, इट विल बी रियली गुड. Now, that apart from the toilets, it is very important. The next part, that is the schools with the drinking water. See, drinking water काफी basic necessity है. आपकी, मेरी और सभी childrens की who are visiting any kind of place, be it the school or any other place, right? And schools में most of their time are going in the school. So basically, it is very important to have such kind of facilities in the schools as well. So the schools with the drinking water also improved from 74.8% to 77.7%. Similarly, अगर हम बात करें schools with the books other than the textbooks, see, textbooks के अलावा एक comprehensive learning के लिए बाकी books भी होनी चाहिए, right? As per their interest. So it has also improved from 36% to 51.3% in the previous 6 years, that is from 2018 to 2024. But schools in Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, and Nagaland continue to lag behind in these facilities. So it is not possible for you to retain the names. So that is why I have not marked them yellow. So the most important information has already been marked yellow in this particular session. Okay. Now the next part is the sports related indicators, guys. Sports related indicators, you can see that 66.2% schools have a playground, right? In 2024. This is the final percentage that we are required to cover here. Okay. So sizable usable girl toilets, then school with the drinking water, schools with textbooks other than schools with books other than the textbooks. Then schools are having the playground. These are different kind of school facilities that should have been there in a school, right? to basically provide comprehensive learning to the children who are studying there. This is another important point. So, guys, with this, we are done with this particular important report, that is the annual status of education report, which is basically for the rural areas. And this was the 14th edition of the report. We have already covered this across the different dimensions, and I have basically tried to cater all the data across the different categories so that it is very, very understandable for you, so that you can learn that and understand it, because education is one of the very important topics, and this report is really a very important report from the exam point of view. Now I am having a homework question for all of you, as this session is quite bigger and quite lengthier. So I'm having a homework question. See, after covering this report, I want all of you to go back and revise this report again, and then come to this homework question and try to answer this question. Try to answer this particular question where you are required to identify correct statements which are mentioned here, right? So find the correct set of statements which are mentioned in this particular question and try to answer the question in the comment section. And the people who will be able to answer this question correctly, guys, let me tell you that you will be the star performer of my today's session. If I talk about the star performer of my previous session, in the previous session, we discussed the question on the Padma Awards 2025, right? And the right answer was basically option E. As in this question, we were required to identify incorrect statements. There were so many students who have basically identified the correct statement and incorrect statement, but they marked the option B as the right answer. That statement number 1 and 3 are correct, but they basically forget that they were required to identify the incorrect statement. So it is very good learning and a very key learning for all of you, that whenever you are answering any question, make sure that you are understanding the demand of the question, and then only you are answering the question as it has been demanded by the question. Okay. So to this question, right answer was option E, that is statement 2 only was incorrect. And here you can see these are the star performers, which includes Aditya, Ashish, Gururaj. Then we have Live Sponge, Shruti, Shivangi, Sunil Kumar, Surat Singh, Varmanesh, Lakshman Meena, and Soumyabrata Mukherjee. Sorry for the wrong pronunciation. Right? So all these are the star performers. Well done, guys, and this really shows that your preparations are really going well and you are really preparing well. So keep it up, and definitely in the exam as well, you will be answering the questions correctly. Now, guys, that was all for the today's session. If you're still new to our YouTube channel, kindly subscribe to it or press the bell icon to receive all the latest updates of the courses and videos offered by us. And apart from that, you can also join our Telegram channel if you want to access the PDF. So for the revision, you need the PDF of these kind of sessions, and that is why you can always access the PDF from the Telegram channel, जिसका link आपको मिलेगा description के अंदर. ठीक है? So guys, that was all from the today's session. Now if you're having any queries from the session, feel free to ask your queries. And if you're having other queries, then you can again share your queries at hello@edutap.co.in. You can call us at 814-620-7241. So my dear friends, I know that this was quite a very heavy report, but yes, if you are really able to retain that information that I have marked yellow, then again it will be very easy for you, right? So it is very important to make sure that we are covering only that content which is really more relevant from the exam point of view, right? So I can see in the chat box that there is not a single query here. So that means everything is clear to all of you. So now we will be moving in the next session. Till then, stay happy, stay healthy. Wish you all happy learning.